its life.
You have.
I'm going to move my light source.
But no, I think it's
had
nice.
more than my share of lives in this one alone.
I think it's you have. I think it's been nice to gather here with you two, whoever else shows up here for us. But yeah, not to like show off or anything, but I'm just curious, Marla, you were saying that you benefited from these discussions. In what way? You said you were stuck. Right?
Well, I wasn't. Yeah, I guess that stuck is a way to put it. I was hungry for my tribe.
Right. And
questions. And so I'd found that a lot of spiritual people I knew were all about faith. They thought they should have faith. They thought they should believe in magic,
faith, I don't think faith is even very spiritual. I mean, in a sense, it's like about a power outside yourself, and nothing wrong with faith, but that wasn't satisfying for you, you're saying, right?
Well, I didn't have a lot of the people I knew just wanted to believe in the magic of psychic abilities, or they wanted to move forward in that area in competency, but they didn't want to ask questions. And so when Henrietta told me about this little Zoom meeting, I had no idea what it was. And she said, "Oh, I know everybody who's asking questions." And I thought, well, thank God. All you have to do is ask. I just asked Henrietta, where are the people who are asking questions? Where are the researchers and where are the scientists?
Right there. But
no, you were right the first time.
No, we're both. That was been so great about Elisabet. I think in her career of 9 lives, she's never stopped asking questions, and
it drove both my children nuts. Why do you have to know? Why do you ask all these questions? Shut up! Stop.
You're a scientist. What
I used to tell him is, I'm a context chaser, because everything gains its meaning in its context. A rose is a very different thing to a donkey or a lover or a perfume manufacturer or to a farmer. And
I need my notes. I need to take notes on what Elisabet
take
says.
Notes. I think it's
I'm
great
taking notes.
Notes every week. Thank you for doing. No, but you're a context.
But what happens is, as soon as you get the first context, like a rose in the context of a donkey, then you want to know more. What's the next level? What's the next level, right? Because the universe is all holarchy. It's holons embedded in each other. And so I say, so you end up with your context going all the way to the whole universe.
Yeah, that's spiritual, Marla. Just exactly what Elisabet said.
I call that being a context chaser or a cosmic snoop, or right?
No, that's what I'm doing too. I think we're aligned, and I think, Marla, you met your people who will help you with those questions. But what have you discovered, Elisabet, within all these contextual situations? What have you discovered?
Well, that no one person can ever have all the answers, because each of us is the center of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
The universe is omnicentric in that sense, that each local consciousness is the center of the whole thing. And so no single center can understand the whole thing or explain the whole thing. You need all of these different perspectives together. Yeah. And that's why our culture has focused on individualism in the past couple of decades in particular. We've gone sort of bonkers on individualism, and we couldn't use words like community because they sounded like communism. Right. And now we get it that, oh my God, the whole planet's in trouble. We've got to act as a communal species, right?
Yes.
We've got to go back to caring and sharing and taking care of each other, and like nobody can run this show themselves, even though we still have people who think they can.
Exactly.
Mm.
So
And
what have
want-
you discovered though? Have you gotten to the root of anything?
Well, I mean, some basics like understanding that consciousness is primary, not matter. That consciousness gives rise to matter rather than what Western science is, that matter gives rise to consciousness. If it really all came from, I don't believe dumb mud, if it really were dumb, would bootstrap itself into living intelligent entities, right? But cosmic consciousness, all you have to do is keep slowing down the vibrations and you get everything, including matter. So Western science gets stuck on my keyboard, right, of vibrations, and they starting in the low keys, and then they can't reach the high keys because they've decided that to be real, it has to be measurable with physical instruments. And their physical instruments can't measure the non-physical upper end of the keyboard.
Right.
But those sciences that look at the high end of the keyboard, the consciousness end, have no trouble deriving it all the way to matter. Now, the problem with a lot of spiritual people, from my perspective, and this is where the Arcturians, I rubbed up wrong against them, is the concept of somehow there's something wrong with matter. It's where evil lurks. It's what you want to escape from to get into the high keys. And I am adamant that we need to play the whole keyboard, that physical worlds are developed for good reason by cosmic consciousness, permeated by, always within cosmic consciousness, and that we're not supposed to sort of go there and say, and retreat from it, but to make it part of the whole caring and sharing, loving enterprise.
Well, that's the problem with a lot of spiritual people. They just want to get out of here. So that's not very spiritual. We're here in form to love the creation.
Yeah, and I don't think the aliens would preach this idea.
I agree with you.
Escaping from matter.
That's just the religious fundamentalist new age pseudo spiritual types, but they're
because I think they love being able to go in and out of the physical world with their ships and stuff like that, right? They don't want to not be able to do that.
No, I think the physical world is where it becomes real, grounded. I mean, all those other realms are great, but it has to work here first. So Marla is like a traveler between worlds, but don't you love the physical too, Marla?
I do. And I think that is probably a big part of our spiritual path. I think that's a big leap to embrace life, to love our own biology, to love the biology of others in the world. I always loved nature so much, and I loved aesthetics. I loved fine art so much. But I don't think I was fully enjoying my body or life. And I really have come to that the last few years. I asked God or the universal life force or my inner knowing, whatever, it doesn't matter. I asked for integration. And boy, that started showing up in the most beautiful ways. And when the two are truly intersected, connecting, working together, and it becomes a seamless life, this is so much less stressful and so much more enjoyable.
Right. Let me ask you, when you go to those other worlds and visit disincarnate, is there still a physicality to them? Or are you just really seeing kind of energy, although this is energy as well? But what's the substance of those worlds?
Well, you bring up such an important point here, Alan, and that is, I can answer that question in whatever way I want, right? Like, for example, I'm highly visual, so I may see something, but I'm also auditory, so I may hear something, but there's also a sense of knowing that I might have. And all three of those things may lead me to think that there's a biology that I can comprehend, but you know, do we know that really? I mean, there are so many ways of perceiving. I say there's 10 psychic senses. So I don't know, Elisabet and I might go to the same planet, let's say. And if I'm seeing something, and then my brain has to work with what information I'm getting from the energy of the place and turn it into something tangible, a story in a way so that I can comprehend it. Well, if Elisabet is having a sense of knowing, she may come up with something slightly different from the same energy flow of information, right? Or the information from the energy. So I'm always hesitant to say, yes, I see other biologies, because seeing them is just another way of perceiving.
Well, is it biology? Is it biologies? Because if we're energy, and these bodies are just containers of energy anyway, and you're seeing other energies, maybe must is not the right word, but is there a container of those energies? And maybe it's not biology in the way we understand biology, but I guess the containers, the substance of the containers, or maybe.
Yes, I understand.
I'm not sure I understand what I'm saying, but yeah.
I understand exactly what you're saying. Don't you, Elisabet? I think it's a perfectly put question. Well, because of my human experience and my orientation, and as Elisabet would say, my context, I'm guessing that I would probably perceive containers of biology, because that's my reference point. I'd like to think that there are just energy streams which we can tap into as well, which I think we can, and I've perceived. I do have a lovely little story for you.
Okay, but before you tell me that story, the reason I said I wasn't sure what I was saying is because the body is the energy as well. It's not just the container, it's actually the energy of it. So your skin, or where you think your body ends, or your auric field,
You're the whole keyboard.
Yes, we're the whole keyboard, especially on this level. So it's all embodied and not embodied. I mean, there's no container in a sense. So that's why. So let's hear your story.
All right. This is about what I call the blue bubble people. Now, I have no idea where they are. They may be cells inside the body, or they may live elsewhere. But how I arrived at meeting them, although they weren't very aware of me, I have to say, was I asked where one of my clients originated from. I don't know, I'm curious. I ask questions. So what I saw were these little round bubbles of consciousness, and they had form because they had edges. And they told me, I guess they were aware of me. They told me that what they'd learned to do over time was to evolve into a state of, we would call it love or peace or happiness. I don't know what word they would use, because they realized that every time one of them had a negative thought, it harmed the others. They were like these cells floating in a watery environment, and they had evolved to that point. I think it's incredible. So once they realized that their thoughts and feelings could either be a blessing to their next door neighbors or be harmful, they all decided, okay, then let's just try to achieve that state of peace and harmony. I mean, it was 100% harmony, which I didn't know could exist.
But aren't you really talking about us? When one of us has a negative thought, it's like it's the same thing.
Yeah.
But we don't even know it's a negative thought, and we haven't even realized that it does harm everyone else. When we have it, we're still in our little bubble, I guess, you know.
We're emanating everything we are all the time to everyone.
So we have to really work on ourselves to shift the emanation.
I think so.
But when I'm just curious, let's go ahead, Elisabet. Yeah.
I'm thinking of the Sarvadiya movement in Sri Lanka, which I've brought up before. That it's a Buddhist movement, but they have 15,000 villages and hamlets that are all helping each other to bootstrap their economies. And what I love about what they teach, the first principles they teach to children as soon as they're old enough to get them sitting down and starting to meditate, and they train that in their kids, that they teach them to meditate on just these two things: inner peace and generosity. Can I be a peaceful person, and what do I have to give? Period. And once I heard that and thought about it, it seemed more to the point than the golden rule. There's something about the golden rule reciprocity that, like,
Yeah.
don't do to me don't do to others what I don't want done to myself.
Right.
There's something energetically doesn't feel as good as everybody working on their inner peace and generosity, right?
I agree. I agree.
That's so beautiful.
The
it's so
golden rule is
beautiful.
vicious. I think it's like
And
that thing.
I've been there on the ground. I've seen these 12-year-old girls sewing clothes for the baby orphans that they pull off garbage heaps and raise. And, it works when kids are trained that way. And look at the Haudenosaunee Indians, who developed a democracy that included nature, women, children, and thought 7 generations ahead about the possible damage of what they would do, and made men wear skirts and carry a corn grinding bowl into Parliament to declare war, so that they would know when they were suggesting war here, what it was going to do to the children, to the women, to the food supply, right? There are human cultures who have may not become perfect, but who have striven for it in what I call really practical ways.
How come we do not emulate those cultures of peace? And is it
Well, isn't that a good question?
just the corporate? It's capitalism and corporate.
Because in the physical world, nature does do these cyclic maturation things. There's such a thing as youth and maturity. And youth is an expansive phase when your cells kept multiplying. And then suddenly in adolescence, oops, your body knew better than to keep doing that. It stopped making you get bigger, right? You were now optimal size, and you now had to figure out how all these cells that had been multiplying had to stay in a cooperative mode to keep you around for a while. So there is that in nature.
But we're still in the infancy stage.
No, we keep going. We've gone through this cycle several times at local levels, but we've never gone through it at the global level. That's why it's new. And so it's why in this time of transition, the youthful mode of authoritarianism and, patriarchal empire and stuff is desperately trying to hang on to its power. And this is openly spoken of in places like the World Economic Forum, that's been training leaders who some of those leaders now head nations. And they've been trained to keep the empire age alive.
But who does it really benefit? No one. I mean, why are they? It doesn't make
that's
sense.
not quite true. There's the 1%, 99% thing,
And the 1%,
the wealthy do enjoy their wealth.
I guess so, but they are very, because if like the bubble thing, one thought affects everything, then the greed of the 1%, they're immune or they're shut down where they're not feeling the suffering of the 99%.
Yeah, and they're doing what they're here to do, like all the incarnations are intentional. and we have to learn from them. So they get extremely clever at talking people into supporting what they're doing. It's like, look at the cleverness of the campaign to get everybody in the world vaccinated. it's been very, very effective, even though we had already made rules for ourselves as humans that you couldn't do medical interventions in people without informed consent. They know how to make people feel really bad if you're not going along with what the authorities, are saying. So, they're getting clever, and we have to wake up and understand, when is it beneficial, when is it not? Who
But
are
it's
the
much
authorities?
bigger than that. It's much bigger. The corporate elite have the power, they have the money, and they're disconnected from their empathy to others. Otherwise, they would feel what other people are feeling. And how do you change that in an effective
Well,
way?
how did they get us to agree to legally call them individuals? The whole corporation legally is an individual.
I don't know how that happened. How did they do that?
Because we were blind to what that means.
But who did that? No, I think we were just unaware. I mean, who did that?
The Supreme Court did it.
The Supreme Court did it? The Supreme Court said corporations are individuals? Really? I didn't know that. That's awful. How could they do like an inhuman thing like
Well,
that?
how can they do what they're doing now?
But what can we do to shift all this? I mean, we're doing our piece or not. I mean,
Wake up and recognize what's harmful and what isn't, what's healthy and what isn't. I mean, look at you. You pointed it out, Alan, that the big pharma companies are, according to our own courts, the biggest criminals in the world. They are paying out billions of dollars in fines for the damage they do, whether addicting people to opiates or whatever. They all did all those things in the name of profits. And now they're the ones who make the new medications and who tell us we have to take them. Doesn't that make anybody suspicious? Does it bother people that they own the media, that if you watch a mainstream television station, you're constantly bombarded about medications?
yeah, that is a little strange. But they
Not
own
strange, they own him.
but they own the politicians too.
What happened to the concept of journalism being impartial?
Well, where are the journalists when we need them? Where are those journalists?
Being paid off. Most of them.
So there must be some honest and clear people, aren't there, Marla? Tell us there are.
Yeah, here we are, Alan.
Technically, yes.
I think that's
Yes,
us,
there
but
are.
and so how come they're not more?
I think I have a little bit different view. I get overwhelmed and concerned, certainly, often in our times. But I did a psychic reading yesterday with a woman who lives in Canada. And I thought this was extraordinary. I saw that about 1/3 of their politicians that are pretty high up in the governmental system were sincere. And that they weren't equipped for the times that they are trying to cope with in Canada. They're not equipped. So it's not, I didn't feel that they were bad people, that they were insincere, that they were devious or terrible. But really, I saw psychically when I looked in deeply, they're at a loss. They're scrambling with no internal resources, honestly, and a lot of confusing external information and that old expression, flying by the seat of your pants. So that's what I got about Canada.
I think you're so right, Marla, that even the people doing the most damage, they're not, what was it you said?
Not bad people.
They're convinced that what they're doing is for the good of everybody. Trump believes that what he's doing is for everybody's good, right? And so what do you say?
Look at Ellen and I are both like, no.
I think he's an exception. He does not believe in good. He just believes in himself.
Okay, Justin Trudeau is one of the graduates of the World Economic Forum Great Reset trainings. So is Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand. So is Merkel. Angela Merkel in Germany. They've been training people in the system that looks really good to these people, right? They believe that, yes, we got to digitize all the money system, and we got to do this, and the technocracy, corporatocracy is good for the world. So there are many, many people incarnated today who absolutely believe that that is what is best for the world. And they don't see things like that adulterate toxic food isn't good for us.
But
us biological beings, that we should be eating organic food, right?
I think it comes back to capitalism, because that is just people after profits, not caring about people and just wanting more. And
Yes,
it's a mindset. And I just did an interview with Foster Gamble, who says we have to do away with authority altogether. He's a libertarian.
Wow.
I know, but look at the interview.
I know Foster inside out. I know exactly what happened to turn Foster into a libertarian.
What happened to him? Because it's radical what he's saying. It's like,
this is a publicly accessible conversation, and I
You don't
will
have
not
to tell
talk
us.
about it. But it's
Okay.
true. It's true. He fell into the Ayn Rand trap. He fell into
But I like him. He really wants to help people be
He used to be one of
self-empowered.
my best friends.
But
I'm in the Thrive movie.
Yeah, but he's doing what he thinks will help people be empowered, and I think that's at least a solution to what we have now. So
I watched his whole transition, and that's why I'm saying that the most good-hearted people. Now, Foster was politically completely naive. He never dealt in politics. He had no understanding of politics. He had not even looked at economics. He was born with a golden spoon in his mouth, and he never had to work. And
I know, but he's a great guy, and he's turned it around and wants to help. So I really like him.
He was manipulable because he was an innocent in the whole political world.
But maybe he saw some light and said, this is how to help people. I think,
Well, he took some information as a source of light, let's say.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're saying he's not seeing the whole picture.
I think he got led down a path that was not where he was headed originally. When the Thrive movie was being filmed, and I'm in that Thrive movie, I know exactly where Foster was when he filmed me for it.
Right.
And I did not go to the opening of the film because by the time it was released, it had gotten very much changed. David Icke was a major figure in it. Foster claimed he had always wanted.
I don't think David Icke's in Thrive 2. I don't think he's in that.
Yes, he is.
I don't think I saw him in that one.
But
anyway,
he's big time in Thrive 2.
But I don't remember him having such a big part. But maybe I saw an edit. But it just goes back to the discussion about good politicians and bad. Michael here, Jalaman, ran for office because he wanted to make a change, and you saw the corruption in politics, right, Michael?
I saw that if they thought you were an idealist, that you weren't trusted.
Who's not trusting? Yeah.
People whose names you would know who are in the political sphere. I don't want to name any names, but the normative thing is people understand we're in politics, to advance our careers or at least keep our job. And, I'm in it. First of all, I was blasted by my Republican opponent for, labeled as this person, living in a big house and, trying to label me as some, out of touch rich person. But basically, if you haven't done favors to the other politicians, and they've done favors for you so that they know you're part of the game, and you're just some idealist, say maybe people would think AOC is an idealist, okay? Whether you like her positions or not, or, Bernie Sanders, some people might think is an idealist. He's been pretty consistent on his positions. You know, he's a Trotskyite from way back.
Yeah, I like it.
Like, I used to read Leon Trotsky when I was in high school too, his History of the Russian Revolution. And I, squabbled with the United Front and anti-war demonstrations against the University of Wisconsin. At the University of Wisconsin, they're quite manipulative. But if they know that you're not, there's certain people in politics someone very prominent who was later had trouble and was charged with corruption, some petty corruption. And this person told some staffer who had worked for him, woman who had spent her career working in Congress, thought I was different than other people. And she went to this senior member of the House of Representatives who chaired a very important committee. And she said, and trying to get more support from me. And to my face, this person was very friendly. But then behind my back to her, he said, I believe it was him or his chief of staff, don't get involved with Jalloman. You don't know what you're getting involved with. Because way before like the Tea Party came along, I'm somewhat of a numbers person. And I was seeing, right now, according to the government, the Social Security Trust Fund will run out of money in 2023. So unless the government puts more money in, people who are dependent on Social Security won't have money. And the deficits for Medicare are like enormous. So the progressives talk about, Medicare for all and Medicare for everyone over 60, but there will not be Medicare for people who've paid into the system who are, will be 65. The deficits were in the tens of trillions of dollars, but that's inconvenient for people to deal with. So I had said something in one of my position papers, like if a corporate executive ran their, pension funds the way the government was running Social Security and Medicare, they'd be put in jail or face fines. So I think, they thought I was like some idealist. And also I ran because I had different ideas on how to deal with Iraq, on how to deal with different problems. And I learned that no one cares what people in Congress particularly think. They're not looking for them to solve important problems.
Well, but so you're saying, Michael, there's no way out.
Pretty shallow game.
So there's no way out of this situation with what is the way out?
I don't know what the way it is out. I'm not saying there's no way out, but I'm saying that the normal game is if you think about business people who are out there to make a profit, then, many political people are just similarly, people primarily interested in their career. I don't know what the way out is.
Well,
I can hypothesize, but
the way out is that evolution does progress and caterpillars do turn into butterflies, and and human cultures
even politicians turn into butterflies, you're saying?
No, she's saying caterpillars.
No, I don't know. I just know that, there are caterpillars and there are butterflies, and you can't get butterflies without caterpillars, but the transformation has to happen, and it's the caterpillar's job to stay alive as long as it can, and it's doing that. I think it's a good metaphor for predatory capitalism, for exploitative growth economies. We all know that exploitative growth economies cannot continue on a finite planet. It's obvious now. It's finally gotten really obvious, right?
Right. So
we can evolve.
Right, but the same things happen with, communist societies. The same things happen, the communist societies that weren't driven by capitalism, had some of the same, environmental abuses and other things. And
well, they adopted capitalism, and the Chinese adopted capitalism lock, stock, and barrel. They made no bones about it. They emulated the US to do it, and they kept the really strong authoritarianism along with it. So, and that a lot of the world loves it. The World Economic Forum has a major branch in China. The head of the World Economic Forum's son is in China, married to a Chinese woman and in charge of the whole Great Reset program in China. And the Great Reset is the current model for keeping the caterpillar alive. And more of us are waking up to that. The young people are both trained in that model and those who see through it. So we've got both things happening. This is the time of turmoil, of everything coming out to light. And the more things get exposed to the light, the better. Because it's the only way to get rid of darkness is turning on lights, right?
Well, Marla, what do you see if you look into the future as a visionary from that psychic level? And what is the way forward and out of the mess? Because it's a mess. And, there's Michael wanting to change things. He's getting pushed aside. I mean, we're all of us, and there doesn't seem to have the power to change. What are you seeing here for the future of planet Earth?
Well, psychically, this is what I get.
Yes.
One of our big problems is that we have lost so much hope. So even if we don't know what the future could look like, meaning in a good way, that we should do whatever we can to restore hope. I don't know, they're telling me this is one of the biggest problems. The other, I think, is that we don't have many clear, rational voices kind of singing out. We have people like us who are asking questions and exploring and discussing, and everybody who's watching or listening, this is really big that we're coming together. But we don't have any strong, clear singing. They use the word, kind of in a way like bells ringing, something that rings true for people at levels where, that was a good one, whatever that was, whatever.
Bell ringing true.
Yeah. So we don't have those organized, clear voices. Sorry, I'm just gonna go ahead.
No, you keep channeling or tapping in. Sorry, go ahead, do it.
No, it doesn't matter.
I'm saying, what do we need?
Well, okay. The other thing that they're showing me is, and Alan will love this, is a diagram of light coming in from above, like tubularly, and then spreading out to the earth. But then I see the reverse thing too. So I'm assuming that this symbol, this model, means to connect to everything up there that is beautiful, light, vibrant, alive, flowing. Learn how to bring that down here. And then all of our earthly beauty, wonders, what's ever functioning, offer that up too. I don't know if this is making sense.
No, it's the double toroidal form. Elisabet knows that quite well, I think. That's what you're seeing.
I love it when I say things that I don't know what I'm saying. I love that.
Yeah.
What is it, Elisabet?
Do you want to explain the double toroidal form and its function, Elisabet?
Well, it's the easiest way for me to talk about it is to consider the Chinese yin-yang symbol. What you have there is an amazing two-dimensional representation of something that's three-dimensional. And what it's showing is a spiraling inward and a spiraling outward. And the center, the two dots are the same center. You see?
Okay.
So the one is spiraling outward, the other is inward. So let's say inward is the gravity force and outward is the radiation force. In physics, in the standard model, you don't have a balance between the two. In the ancient models, you do have a balance between the two. And so the outward form goes around, and on the other side of your bubble, let's think of a bubble, it goes back in, it's sucked back in, the gravity force, and then it comes out as the light force and expands, then it contracts back in. So you've got a donut shape, that's a toroid. A toroid, mathematically, it's a single a solid with a single hole through it. Technically, like a teacup is a toroid, because there's only one hole through the solid cup, and that's in the handle, right? The handle always has a hole through it. So you could mush that clay into a solid ball with a single hole through it. So mathematically, it's malleable in that way. But that toroidal model is a beautiful way of seeing a balanced radiation gravitation model. In the standard model of physics, you have 4 forces that are called the radiation, gravity, the strong force, and the weak force. But actually 3 out of the 4 are gravity at different size levels. Mm-hmm. And there's some reason why Western science can't see that there are really only 2, and that they have to stay in this balance. You can't have light without dark. You wouldn't know what light was without darkness, right?
This is Nassim's work. Are you quoting Nassim Haramein?
Yeah, it's the original Nassim Haramein toroidal model. Right. And it's gotten way more complex mathematically since then, but we were friends long ago because I met Nassim through Foster, actually. Because Foster found Nassim when he was a long-haired, scruffy hippie in a little tin trailer and started funding him, bought him a computer, was listening to him talk, and Nassim got his original information from ETs. When he was a kid.
He had abduction or contact as a child. He taught him.
Absolutely.
And his sister.
He was taken out over and over and taught how to fly the spaceship and all that stuff. So here's our ET connection.
but Marla, does that description that Elisabet gave help what you're seeing? And how do we work with that model to change where we're at now socially? I mean,
You're muted, Marla.
Oh, mute. We don't want to miss anything.
Oh, you're so kind. Thank you. I'm getting 2 cliches, and I'll just say those, and then we'll see where we go. But they're so ultimately important. How do we get there? Well, love of self is nothing without love of other. And even loving the connection between self and other is hugely important. Now, I don't know, what are we supposed to do with that? I don't know, we'll ask in a minute. So I just want to say that, what I see is in our little history, cultural history, Western culture, about the self-love movement, which has been so big, right, as to become a cliche. It's important, I'm seeing. That concept of self-love and people really trying to learn how they're worthy and how they're valuable and how they matter, and going through whatever they have to go through to get there is really, really good. So that's valuable. And then the loving other, I think, is obvious. I think the interesting thing is loving just as much the connection between the two. And I'm not sure exactly what that means. I mean, I could speculate, the energy connection, the whatever, I could go on, but that seems to be just as important as loving the other 2 things. I love that. I'm going to be thinking about that. The other cliche I get is understanding that really everything is connected. You don't even have to, you don't have to love it. You don't have to do, and you don't have to feel anything about that. Like, if we can come to a deep fundamental understanding that everything is truly connected. Now, we've heard this a million times. My question is, how do we how do we utilize that? I mean, I feel like I've come to understand more that everything's connected through my work. How can it not be? How can I ask questions, Alan, as you said, and get answers? That system alone, my own little system, shows us that we're connected to everything. But how do we start to live that? I mean, how does that come into our infrastructure someday?
Right. And how does that make an influence on the people we're talking about who are, running the earth into the ground, so to speak? I mean, running, civilization, plastics, and, all the things that are in the way of a utopian in order for the 1% to have money. So how do we work with that? It's great. Maybe that is maybe it has a radiating effect, that self-love, on those others. Maybe it's a field effect. I don't know.
But
What
if
do you?
the three are equal, and I love this, and I better write it down so I don't forget. The loving those three elements, which of course then means that you love everything. If you love the self, the other, and the connection between the two, I think, you know what I think? I think that we should be tuned in to what space scientists and researchers are telling us. I think that should be maybe more of a I have one scientist friend who says things in science should be on the news like every day. They're so exciting, what's being discovered. And I think for us to see and know a tiny bit about what's out there in space would be helpful. That's
why Elisabet's here. She's devoted her life to science and understanding it, I think, in the form of consciousness and evolution. Right, Elisabet?
Yeah, I love what you're saying, Marla, and of course, individuation is super important, and our task is now to weave that individuation back into community without losing it.
Yes.
So that we don't become a hive of ants or bees or something like that, but humans that can think individually and that can have a conscience individually and can develop ethics individually toward others. These are all very important. Now, I think nature, even climate change, in a strange sense, is on our side, because since we can't get it without being pushed into our evolution, the earth is now pushing us. She's expressing the damage that's been done to her. And she's also forcing us more and more to see, look at these new hurricanes and these new fires, and suddenly governments are having to spend billions of dollars just to get communities back on their feet again and stuff. So I've always said, I think that the Caterpillar's real plans, the corporatocracy as Caterpillar, right? The corporatocracy's plans for taking over and running this show will be eroded by the obvious need to take care of each other. And I mean, here in Hawaii, the best thing about COVID was the way people came out of the woodwork to take care of each other. When the tourist industry stopped, the organic farmers had nowhere to give their food, and non-organic farmers as well. So they had to turn it into meals for people who couldn't eat any other way. And so these crises keep presenting us with the opportunities for understanding why caring and sharing makes so much more sense, and why it would liberate us into our true creativity. And the government will just keep printing more money and stuff like that until they get it, that what's really happening is what you're doing with the money is paying people on the ground to build new houses, to dig new holes, to drain new swamps, right? It all comes back to the fact that we human creatures dig ourselves out of our own holes, right?
So we make the holes and dig ourselves out of it, because that's where we're in a big hole now, aren't we? So
we're in a big hole now. And I mean, in a way, I'm a minister of hope, because
Yeah.
I can show it's so obvious to me that there's such an easy way out of all of this, that caring and sharing is something that comes so naturally to women. And I think, every crisis is waking up more people. It's waking up, every uncovering of the criminality of our corporatocracy is waking up more people.
Yes, but I think where the helplessness and the powerlessness comes in, for example, while you're talking, I'm thinking, okay, that's all working on like a small level. These farmers decided to help these people, which is great. But then how do we systematize that? How do we get engineers and architects and developers involved in creating, when we live near waterways, I mean, maybe we should do what some cultures have done, which is to put your house up on sticks or to build higher or to whatever. Those are so ridiculous examples, maybe, but it doesn't seem like we're thinking about these things, and they have to be thought of on such a large scale. I think this is why we feel so helpless. Like, we can, we can recycle to the best of our ability in our own little, every city has its own little recycling program. It all works differently, it all whatever, but it seems so small. Elisabet, can you give me hope for
look
at larger systems?
Look at the Ethical Markets website, because they track the green economy, and you'll see that the investments are going up so rapidly in the green economy that it's an exponential curve, because more and more investors are getting that investing in the long-term future is no longer in the old ways, and we see it that the whole fossil fuel economy has to go. The hydrogen economy is growing. I'm in touch with people who are building that. And sorry, there's a rescue vehicle going by.
No problem. I can hear you clearly.
Okay, as long as you can hear me through it. This is because we've let tourism come back into Hawaii, and tourists get themselves into trouble. And then the rescue vehicles have to come out to save them. And then it will all die down again. It is happening, and the scale is growing. The problem is that the mainstream media is so fakest. Oh, that's an interesting slip of the tongue. They're fakest on the stuff that we shouldn't be paying attention to. Right? Yeah. And looking for individual horror stories and stuff like that. And you can see that the media is simply not funded to give hope to people. Isn't that crazy? You would think.
I always thought that was crazy. And if we had more hope in our media, we would feel less overwhelmed. You know what I had to start doing this week? I felt overwhelmed at every station I turned to. It didn't matter what it was. Liberal, not liberal. I got so overwhelmed that I had to put on Los Angeles La Raza mariachi music. That's what I've been listening to all week, which is an example. I know it's funny, but fabulous music. Having grown up here in Southern California, I love it. But I am one who does listen to the news and tries to pull at least from a few different sources. So if I'm feeling overwhelmed to that point, many more people are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, most people, that's why they're depressed. That's why they're taking antidepressants. That's why they're suffering, is because they're overwhelmed. There's no, unless you have a spiritual practice or something, or a community or sangha, as they say, that's where community is what a good community is, where someone can find hope. And this larger community that, we're all a part of, I think supports each other in saying there has to be a better way. I mean.
Yeah, you know, it's so crazy that we're being kept in fear all the time. The media its main role seems to be to maintain a state of fear in people that will keep them obedient.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, fear of the micro world always drives me batty. We can't live without our microbes, and yet we're in this modern day and age, in the 21st century, we're scared of microbes. Like, come on, people.
Do you know
Whatever
what she's
happens
saying
when
about
you-
microbe, Marla, that most of our body is made of microbes, bacteria? Do you know
But
that?
I'd love to hear about it from Elisabet. I'm sure I don't know very much.
Yes, because
It's
nobody
so funny,
knows
you know,
we're really
the old family farm was in balance, the balance between the animals and the plants, the constant restoration of the soils and the water. I grew up on these farms when, you know, at a time when there was food rationing, you know, the shortages and stuff. And there was an abundance of food all the time, you know, and everything was just kept in this healthy balance. And now everything is separated. All we think in the future, oh, we're going to have vat meat and vat tomatoes and vat veggies. And, you know, we're going to grow it all hydroponically, and you get paid through your cell phone. And come on, please, can I be an idealist? Because that is not an ideal future to me.
No, it's not. And then the water problem in California. And you know what is criminal, Marla, and I think you might appreciate, I don't know, but you go to Palm Springs, in the middle of the desert, there are these golf courses that no one's on because it's 108 degrees, but they're green acreages being watered in the middle of summer. For what reason? That should be criminal. That should be, but you know, they're paying for the water, the rich hotels, and no one seems to care. I mean, right there is our problem, Elisabet.
We're going to learn that one very quickly, because the whole Colorado River, you know, everything it feeds is going to go down the tubes. And that's why I say that if you try to see that nature is just screaming at us, wake up, move your cities uphill before I flood them, because you've given me a fever. My temperature is rising. That's going to make me sweat. Right? I'm going to drown your cities. Wake up and move now, or stop doing this.
Right. But it's not happening. No one's listening to that.
Well, yes, people are evacuating some coastal areas. We get a lot of refugees from Pacific Islands here,
Okay.
from other Pacific Islands. And so, you know, we see the people who are losing their homes to the sea, and our own beaches are eroding, houses are falling in the water. So, yeah, we know we're going to have to lose our beaches and move uphill.
But could we make that news where it's not discouraging, but say, this is what is happening and this is what we have to do? You know, it's not just
those voices are out there, but those voices do not own the mainstream media. They can't reach the masses.
That's the
I think
problem.
that's what the clear singing voice that I was speaking to, those who are clear and singing are not high enough up in the power structure to
and they'll never be allowed to, because the current power structure is the problem.
Well, Marla, don't you see a way out of this though? Because you're
my God, is it all up to me to get
Yes,
the information, Ellen?
you're
Apparently, Marla, it's all yours.
Well, you have
Is it mariachi music right now? I'm kidding. Yes.
It's not up to you.
Marla, I think Alan would like to see some kind of life in the future going on this planet.
Well, some hope.
That's relatively progressive.
No, but I do believe there's a great future awaiting this planet if we can just get through this little difficult time. It's sort of like, you know, in biology, I think it's Bruce Lipton says, you know, in the earliest forms of life, they produce this toxic gas called oxygen, and most of the planet was being suffocated by this oxygen until
my
oxygen breathing creatures somehow evolved to
Yeah.
breathe, right? Isn't that
There were
example?
two great ancient crises, and we humans are repeating them. No other species between the ancient bacteria, when they were the only thing on Earth, and
Right.
us, has duplicated this pattern of having created global hunger first. That
Right.
was the first thing. They ate up all the free food. And
Well,
then they had
you're
to.
talking about the bacteria, what happened?
Yes, I'm talking about the bacteria. The original fermenting bacteria ate up all the food, and then they had to invent photosynthesis in order to make food from what was left, which was sunlight, water, and minerals. And that they invented
That's
photosynthesis.
nature coming.
Solved global hunger. But then the very bacteria that came out of that, the photosynthesizers, what were they doing? They were they were creating a lot of oxygen as their waste gas, right? That's what trees do. That's what plants do. They give off oxygen. And rather than setting up a balance, what happened was that the oxygen began polluting the atmosphere, right? That's what you're saying. And things had to go underground to escape from it because it's a very corrosive gas.
Right.
And so first they created global hunger and solved it. Then they created global pollution, and they solved that by inventing breathers, as you said. Those are the ones, and Bruce got this from me originally. Actually, I got it from Lynn Margulis, the great microbiologist.
Right.
And then I passed it on to Bruce way back before he wrote his first book.
Well, that really changed Bruce's whole.
But my favorite Bruce line is, what is it? We will never become truly human until we get our humanity.
That's in my book. I quote him at the end of my book. He said, "We are not humans until we create humanity." This is when we realize we used
to call it the body of humanity.
Right.
And which is still not a bad idea, but I sort of moved into growing up from the youthful mode to the mature mode. And we're destined to go into mature mode or go extinct.
But nature came. But in those two cases where they ran out of food and oxygen, nature reinvented itself through some miracle, and we have yet to discover how to reinvent ourselves.
Well, I used to say, if bacteria could do it without benefit of brain, what's keeping us from doing it?
What is our brain? Maybe our thing. What is keeping?
The brain is a bit of a problem because when our brain exploded in size, we lost knowing how to conduct ourselves. Other animals, they know how to find mates, how to reproduce, how to govern themselves, how to divide up territory. And we lost all of that in this explosive brain development that gave us freedom of choice. But we didn't get what the responsibility of that was, that we had to choose how to govern ourselves, how to feed ourselves, how to, build our own economies and polities.
Right. So
that's the challenge.
This is where we're at. Yeah, Marla. Yes.
It's a trade-off, right?
I was thinking while you were talking that one place I got to last year was realizing that I really know nothing. And I think that's a great place to be. I felt very free once I realized how little I really know. I think that could be a step. I mean, because that's really humbling. It's it creates humility, and I think maybe it creates an attitude of welcoming others without the harsh judgments, because we all know that we have a problem with that currently. And people claim on any side that you want to go to, everybody knows, and we don't really know.
That's
I agree.
because humans are storytelling creatures and we live by our stories. We have always lived by our stories. It's not knowing in the sense of this deep truth. We keep telling stories to try to figure out which ones lead us to a better life. That's the only thing important.
Oh, I love this.
You know, is our stories must be leading us to a better life. If they're wrecking our lives, there's something wrong with the story, right? So that's why I say it takes everybody to get to the truth together. But so we have a kind of storytelling competition going on all the time. And we've been telling ourselves this story of human nature that says that we're competitive, that's the way things are, that the universe is just matter and energy, and consciousness is somehow squeezed out of brains once they evolved. And, you know, that story just isn't working well for us anymore. So the quantum physicists all had to turn to India, to Vedic science, to even have a context for what they were discovering. To make a story out of their discoveries, they had to go to a different worldview. And that's why I have crusaded for having multiple sciences in the world that have a consortium of sciences, the way the religions have a parliament of world religions, so that we can have the different sciences feeding each other and seeing which ones are producing good results for humanity, right?
Yeah.
And everything else that we're dependent on for people and planet.
No, I agree. That is great. That is one of our answers there that I was looking for, really, because I think a consortium of science where they're open, they're not skeptics. They say, well, is the government, getting back to our original topic, the government is saying there's something out there and people are seeing things in the sky. Why don't we look into the reality of this and see what we can learn from it? Right?
Without attacking first.
Right. Without denying something that obviously is a reality. But
yeah, when we call ourselves, creatures that are hostile and competitive, we then project that onto anybody else's visiting. Right. That's crazy. That's no way to bring company into your home.
Right. No, we have company.
I have a friend that says ETs would never come here for vacation.
Really?
Well, like, why would they? Everybody's down there fighting and squabbling and.
Yeah, we have to clean up our
actually, the ones that do come and hang around, go to places in the world where they're accepted and honored and valued, like up in the Andes.
But I mean, you gave me a little taste of an answer here, Elisabet, how we can start to change, bring scientists together and but it doesn't seem to be enough. It doesn't feel like that's enough to shift the situation we're in.
We have to make our news stories so attractive that we become the attractors rather than the corporatocracy for its story. We have to be able to show results. We can do that. We can show that people are healthier when they eat organic food and stuff like that. But how do we make the story of the future so appealing that it's as juicy and as exciting, as the destructive stories?
Well, the story of the corporatocracy is like, you work hard, you make money, you look out for yourself, you step on other people.
Yeah, but it's also anybody who can become. It's also anybody can become president and anybody can get rich, and they don't tell you everybody can't do that. But
it's like, look out for yourself and ignore other people, and doesn't matter. Let's throw this disposable world away. And there's no education, I don't think, in schools about
exactly. There's no teaching children to cultivate their own garden of beliefs, the stories that they're told, to be able to evaluate which of those stories leading to a better life. There's no training for kids in becoming, productive, healthy storytelling creatures.
So that has
To understand how they take in stories and live by them, and to see, they call it the garden of beliefs, because then you talk about weeding out those beliefs that no longer serve you and planting new beliefs in it and making your garden ever more fruitful.
the garden of beliefs. That's good one, Marla.
Like it. I'm gonna watch this whole thing again and hang on every word that Elisabet says.
Good,
No,
'cause I've reached my 90-minute limit.
I know I have to go soon too. But I mean, Elisabet has devoted her life to looking at the big picture. That's why you're a resource for us, and
That's
so
important. I was thinking about that today.
Elisabet has to go soon. But yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was thinking the shower that I've devoted my life to helping and to help us move forward. And I would love in the future to see that there are more places for those of us who are devoted and more support for people like us.
Yeah, and Michael should run again.
Yeah, Michael.
That was the worst thing
Michael.
I think that was the worst
Put
thing I ever
your
did.
camera
I think,
on, Michael, for a
What?
second. Put your camera on, because
Oh.
it was the worst thing you ever did. I don't want to
I think so. I mean, because it was so disillusioning. I mean, in part, I got accused. Someone had threatened me, someone who was a very Stalinist person who worked for my Democratic primary opponent, and she had been the Democratic candidate before, and she wanted to run again.
Yeah.
And they tried to convince me to run for the assembly, state assembly, and I was interested in federal policy. And they said at some point, hey, we'll destroy your reputation if you run. Now, naively, I looked at my life and thought, hey, what do I have to be concerned about? And my Republican opponent later found a picture of me with a picture of Che Guevara, behind my head, and like my, which they put. But I didn't. So I thought, hey, I don't really have anything that I'm really concerned about people finding out. I was naive, and I didn't think about the whole domain of them just making stuff up.
Right.
So it became like,
wait,
I'll take back my urging you to run again and saying, if you like playing in politics, get behind the best people there are and help them.
You can find some good
behind
people.
the scenes has been better for me. I do have access.
Elisabet has to go, but Elisabet, we will pick up the conversation next week. We can continue for a little while. Thanks again for all your
Butterflies.
wisdom.
Much love, Elisabet.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next week.
Yes.
Bye.
What were you saying? I have to go soon too, but continue. You and Marla, go ahead, Michael.
I was just saying, when I ran for Congress, I wasn't thinking about the whole category, destroying my reputation, that they could just make things up. So they made up that I was business partners with this man, Ahmed Chalabi, who was, the deputy prime minister in Iraq. I mean, I never saw this guy one day in my life, right? I never had, they could just make things up, and then they'd spread rumors around. I was pretty naive to how nasty politics can be.
They totally fabricated a story and had other people believe it. And that's the most unethical thing anyone can do.
Yeah, but that's, I guess, part of like the game, right? I guess
I don't think so.
That they could say that someone had some illegitimate black child, or, they spread rumors and things.
Mr. D goes to town, right? Isn't there movies about that? Mr. Smith goes to Washington.
Yeah, I guess, but
it's but anyway.
Anyway, it was not. And then I just saw that, I would see political leaders who we would know their names. They're in important positions, or there were. And when they're among themselves, that I saw them, they were playing inside baseball of politics, not deeply concerned about how to solve the country's problems or come up with new solutions to
Right.
pressing problems. That I never heard that kind of conversation. I heard, hey, someone over there, you can go get money for your organization. Hey, like that very cynical stuff. Now,
Well,
there were some people that I've heard of or I met, who I thought, better of, but it was pretty selfish kind of, game. It was like the business
wow.
world.
Wow.
But
Well,
you have, I'm just thinking about
wait,
that.
I'm gonna just like step. You guys continue, and then when you leave, maybe I'll jump back in. But go ahead, Marla. I'm just going to.
Well, I was just wondering, Michael, I have a question for you. So, because you have so much more experience than most of us, than any of us, anybody I know, certainly, how could your insight and your experience lead us to a healthier infrastructure? I'm not trying to put the whole thing on your shoulders, Michael, but
Well, I think that we need, to create, more communities of like-minded people. And I do think that Jonas Salk, who Elisabet knew earlier, I think, than when I did, but, who was a mentor to me and wanted me to set up an institute and wanted me to come back from my spiritual studies in India. He had this view that the future of humankind could either be positive or negative, and that it was up to the next generation, 2 generations, and now we're into the second one, to make things happen. And he did not have the view, which some of my, spiritually gifted friends think, that, oh, we're coming into a new age, there's this outpouring of, energy, and then things miraculously positive are going to happen. And I'd be interested in what, your guides tell you. I mean, Salk's view was it could go either way. Not that it would go to extinction for humankind, but it would go to degrading, the conditions on the planet for humans. And, I love, have a lot of respect for, Elisabet's view. And, I've been a corporate consultant, so I see the negative side of big corporations. I also see the positive side in terms of them creating food so that we've ended hunger. We don't currently have ways of agriculture that I know of organically that would feed billions of people. When I've worked on the food issue, when I worked for Buckminster Fuller, I'm not saying it's not possible. I certainly believe in organic, but I don't think it's as simplistic as, blaming the corporate world. I mean, Afghanistan doesn't have a corporate world, and look at the Taliban, or other, societies. It wasn't some wonderful thing on the planet, in our tribal societies, or in places where, and I think that the conversation is very shallow and foolish. I think the conversation is shallow, sophisticated, but shallow at the universities. Okay. Salk, to me, does have a good view. Slavery was part of the human condition, and then we evolved out of it. We had slavery for thousands of years. Now we have, like, we're the quote progressives, and Harvard, where I went to business school, and other places, you can't even discuss slavery, in an intelligent historical way, particularly. It's just, oh, slavery's bad. America's this horrible country because we had slavery. Well, what about Africa? Did Africa enslave other African tribes? I mean, this is the human condition that we're evolving out of. I think there's a lot of deep thinking that has to go on. How do you take Afghanistan, which was a tribal society, and then evolve that society? We did not know how to do that. I was, asked to be involved with Afghanistan. I visited it. I knew that what we were doing made no sense. We poured trillions of dollars trying to turn Afghanistan into the United States, with gay rights and women's rights, and, anything that we think is good for America, we think is good for Afghanistan, without understanding how you take a society that's from the feudal times, illiterate, feudal, impoverished, where there's ingrained corruption as part of, like, the accepted social structure, you know, and how you evolve that society. We don't know how to do that. Harvard doesn't know how to do that. I don't think Elisabet knows how to do that. It's not like there's all answers for these things. And I think we have very superficial, you know, conversations on things. It's, you know, very dyadic. It's either or, good, bad, you know, good, bad. You know, Robert E. Lee was a horrible person. I'm not saying he was a great person. I know he was one of Jean Houston, you know, who's someone I know and respect, one of her ancestors. I don't support, you know, the Confederacy or the vestiges of it, but you can't have a conversation of, hey, what were the positives? What were the negatives? How did we evolve out of slavery? How could we have? How did Britain evolve out of slavery? Maybe a little bit earlier than us. And again, we can't talk about slavery in Africa. This wasn't just something all of a sudden the United States did in abstraction. I'm just making this up because bringing this up because it's normally the kind of thing I assume not that many people, you know, woke people or whatever are going to watch and cancel me, but you can't even discuss in a nuanced way, you know, these kinds of issues. And I'd be interested in your guides and whether they have a perspective like that there is some new age that's destined, and some of the Tibetan prophecies, they think a dark age is destined. And then they think that somehow miraculously from this kingdom of Shambhala, you know, which is connected, you know, which is something that Alan would like because it could be akin to, you know, other realms, other domains. It's something connected to the earth, but it's not of the physical domain. People are going to come from Shambhala and they're going to write things, and we're going to go from a dark age to a golden age. I don't say it's not true. I don't say it's true. I have no basis to know. I have no basis to know my friends who think, you know, the light's coming in and, you know, Earth is moving through this great light force field and things are going to be miraculously transformed. Like you were saying, I don't see it. You know, there's just too much, you know, there's limited place where we can have a voice. And again, it's not just that the media is looking to sell fear. The media is looking to sell stories. If there's a story of someone surviving some catastrophe and people are interested in it and they'll watch, you know, then the media will play that story. If there's the Taliban kept murdering people right now or telling women in certain places over 12 they can't go to school or whatever, that's a story. It's not making up promulgating some fear story.
I'm not a total utopianism. I believe that we're here to evolve and each person is kind of on their own path. And if we can work together, make it easier for each other, it helps everyone. So I think it's a work in progress.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's true. I mean, that's what we can see. We can help each other and we can support each other.
That's all I'm asking here. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, well, I think that's true. What the fate of the planet is going to be, I don't know. You know, like Elisabet said, it is positive. There is more money going into the green economy. There's more money you know, for environmental and social good, money going into that in the past, much more interest in that than, you know, I've been, you know, that's part of naively, I went to Harvard Business School thinking to transform capitalism, literally, not to go work for a bank. I wanted to transform capitalism. And, you know, there wasn't a job then when you graduate to transform capitalism. So things are improving, you know, things are improving in that way, you know.
Did you learn anything in Harvard Business School though? I mean, you must have.
I understand. I learned a significant amount about how the corporate world functions and the domains of the business world and the domains of, it's a good education for learning how to market things and having to do finance and how to run factories and, you know, the things that make the planet work. I mean, Apple Computer, I don't mean to single them out or praise them. You know, they're worth $1 trillion or $2 trillion. You know, they put something with the power of a supercomputer of days of old now into, you know, hundreds of millions of people's hands. I mean, the corporate world has fed people on the planet, has created medicines that have extended life. Now, I don't particularly take those medicines or use that kind of stuff myself. I haven't had to, but there are some blessings of,
I agree.
from modern industrial society and from science. I do think that, Salk had this view, survival of the wisest. How do we make the model of the leadership those who are wise? And I don't think that we have a recognition of wisdom or an inculcation of wisdom or a distinction, in the established society between wisdom and just intellect.
I'm writing that down, survival of the wisest. That is something that we could all try to attain, couldn't we?
Yeah, well, individually
and certainly,
I think that's what the three of us are trying to support each other in. I feel that with Alan and with you, in terms of increasing our wisdom, seeing our blind spots. It has to be a place too where we see where we're off, where we're wrong, so we can grow, in a loving way. And yeah, then if we can grow and then contribute to a better future for the planet, then whatever will happen. But, we can play our part, and if we can grow and evolve and become wiser and kinder and more loving and happier and have access to better health in the process, then I think it's a wonderful thing.
I agree.
Marla, I made you the co-host, so when you leave, you just end it.
Okay, I'm gonna take a photo of you right now,
Me?
Alan, in your handsome suit.
Oh yeah, I have to go somewhere.
Okay. All right, good.
Thank you. All right. You have fun, you guys.
Thank you. It's just us, Michael. What do you want to talk about?
I don't know at the moment. I would have access to all different other channels if I knew that we weren't being live cast right now. But given that we're being live cast, I'm not sure.
Ask her a question from the psychic realms, and then I'm leaving. Okay.
Okay, bye, Alan.
I'll see you next week. Let's do it a little later. Let's do it at 7 p.m. Eastern. That's
all right.
Pacific.
It's Yom Kippur, so this was propitious also. It's before the holiest of the Jewish holidays, Alan, so great.
Right. We're trying to set a new year in order. We'll see how it goes.
At least for us.
Well, for everyone, for the world.
Well, yeah.
We don't want it just for us. That's the problem.
Well, we can declare it, we can intend it, but I don't believe that our power of intention yet is going to turn around the whole planet, but maybe it can. Maybe I just
like those little bubbles. Go ahead, Marla.
Those little bubble people, I love them. If they learned how to do it, you know what I thought, Alan, about the bubble people? I thought they might be cells. And I thought if we could get love into our bodies, that are, if that could be our cells, and we could, the brain could be the arbiter of or the creator of that idea, and that intention that's what we're going to do in this environment. We don't have to go into the details of this, but I had a severe illness, and I'm totally recovered. Everything is fine, but I had a lot of time on my hands. And one thing that I did, I thought, in order to get well, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And one of the things was watch everything on Netflix. But I'm kidding, but not kidding. I saw everything. But the other thing was that I meditated for hours a day, and I meditated asking God to bring love into my body. And I told Michael this before, at a certain point, I realized that I could start to self-generate that. And I never connected that in this moment. I mean, until this moment with the blue bubble people, right? If I was directing love, if I was focusing my entire body on love, then wasn't that happening with the cells of my body? It's the same thing, right? We don't have Alan anymore. So
Oh,
I'll just
sorry. I'll
Oh.
just say one more. I'll just, before I leave. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's what we're here to do. The cells of our body and maybe everyone around us as
Yeah.
well. The inner and the outer.
That
All right.
was very powerful. So okay, bye, Ellen. We won't keep you. But
No,
I
no,
do recommend for people who like to meditate or pray. I found that to be extremely powerful, but I didn't realize how powerful it was until I felt like one time I went into prayer / meditation and I was able to, as I said, self-generate love. I noticed it like all of a sudden. It wasn't over time that I felt more loving that I noticed. It must have been like a tipping point or something. I don't know.
Well, that's a good thing to be able to do, to self-generate love, to sit in love and, feel that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's meditation practices that I've done over the years that, is a very specific meditation practice in the Tibetan, Buddhist tradition. Also in the Vipassana tradition, just have loving kindness. But in the Tibetan tradition, the deity called Chenrezig, who's also known as Kuan Yin, you imagine yourself as like that Kuan Yin, that Chenrezig. There's like a 1,000-armed form where you're using your arms to help others, but you're then, just sitting in and generating that feeling of love, or rather than as much generating as just going into a non-dual awareness and allowing that love energy to emanate, to radiate, to be present. And just like with another practice, you can do that with bringing in healing or bringing in wisdom or bringing in power. There's one of these practices for love and compassion. And, so that's a wonderful thing. And with, certain people, that quality just emerges more easily. And then there's other people who, are triggering for us. And then maybe then it requires some conscious intention or somewhat the Tibetan Buddhists would call an antidote, or some mental pathway to then say, think of that person as, suffering. So that's why they're being hostile. And then having compassion, or thinking of them as in another life, they were our mother and cared for us. So we develop compassion for them in that way, or thinking that they're someone's child, but different tools then for when the compassion is not just spontaneously flowing, to develop and, like you said, generate the compassion and the love. But I do think, and here's the other important point with it, is that in the Buddhist approaches to non-duality, love is one of the powerful doorways, or one of the large doorways to the non-dual awareness, that as we center and ground ourselves in that feeling of love, then the reality opens up and becomes more present and more expansive and more luminous through that doorway of allowing love to come through.
So what is one way that I could, just as an example, who really knows very little? I've had some contact with Buddhist masters in a psychic way, as I've told you before, but in terms of learning from them, you have so much experience. What is something that I could do every day that, we don't have a very long attention span, something short that would allow me to further enter that doorway? Luminous love sounds really good, Michael.
Well, I think one of the things, that we can, could do together, and we could do it with Zoom or, FaceTime or something, is just to take it's calling a be with process. And normally we do it with another person, and you're in person, because it was developed before this kind of technology existed, where you have these video phones basically, and you basically look into the other person's eyes, and gaze into their eyes, and then just open your heart and be present. And then it allows that feeling of love to just expand. It's also something that you can do. I was hearing a little bit of the conversation when I had to go attend to my mother, early part of the conversation where we're talking about self-love and love for others. Another powerful thing is to look in the mirror and then to connect with your own eyes, and then to allow that feeling of love towards yourself. And again, that sense of love to just grow. But it works very powerfully with two people in a dyad, and I think that is something that we could do.
Wouldn't that be great if businesses could do that?
Well, I have done that. I have. Well, I
You
have.
have? Tell me.
Yeah, inside of workshops, inside of companies, when I'm doing team building and, having a group of people that I think are appropriate, because I will, screen who comes in and who doesn't, for a group. I mean, if I was working with a team and I had to work with everyone, then I would work in a different way than if I could select who the people are that I'm working with. But yeah, I mean, you can generate love between people in a corporate setting. There are progressive things that have occurred in the corporate world. I worked with this man, Charles Crone, who chose to be very secretive, but he was a teacher to numbers of CEOs of major companies. And, taught them non-dual awareness, taught them, spiritual practices, and taught them, actually, if you're asking, the question about what's required for the planet, there's a whole set of systemic ways of how you create systemic change and frameworks for that had been, one of them is the Enneagram, different structures for analyzing societies and individuals that are quite powerful. Again, much more powerful than the normal either or. This group is good, this group is bad, the anti-vaxxers are bad, the, vaxxers are good, which would be, I worked with Jonas Salk, so I'm a big proponent of vaccines and I see that they save lives. But there's just much more sophisticated structures of thinking, and these are not particularly taught in the universities or used. So like in one of these structures, it's like, I asked this question, how do you take Afghanistan and then evolve that society? And there's a structure called the tetrad. That's a structure that Aristotle, who was one of the most influential thinkers in Western civilization for many hundreds of years, developed, which is a structure for how you would transform a big society or an open system. And yet we don't do that. We operate in some idealistic way. So that, we created something that was disconnected from village life and from, the society as it existed in Afghanistan. And we created something that the people there weren't willing to fight for. And we didn't create structures for, even though we spent trillions of dollars, look at the result. And I would just simply assert that it was because we didn't know what we were doing and we didn't have structures for thinking that would allow us to make the kinds of sustainable change that was required there, as opposed to idealistic change.
So go ahead.
Yeah, but just going back, to your simple question, I think love is just it's oversimplified. Love is, the only answer. Love is what we came here for. But, love was Christ's teaching, and he's still one of the most powerful of the influences on humankind, certainly for, billion plus people or more. And love is very much a powerful force, and it can be used in different ways. So like one of the things that I taught when I was working for a large Japanese company, we used the Book of the Five Rings, which was a samurai training manual, that people could relate to culturally in Japan. And the samurai would use love as well, even when they were fighting to kill someone and not die. Because love, if it can bring you into that luminous presence, then you see in the way that like a martial artist would see, and could be more skillful than with your swords, with whatever aim you had, whether it was, to destroy your opponent or disarm your opponent. But I mean, not to sugarcoat things. Classically, it was to, strike the opponent on the chest or a place where you would kill them and would win, because there is this dimension of its survival. So again, I like really Salk's model, which is humankind operated out of this survival mode. How are we going to compete in nature? And now how do we evolve to something better? Rather than, lovingly for me to say then Elisabeth's kind of thing, like, human nature isn't about competition or isn't about survival or isn't, it's just manifested like this magically because of the bad media or the bad corporate world. No, this is how humankind has manifested from when we were little groups of humans battling other groups of humans for water holes and other things, hundreds of thousands of years ago. It wasn't like this, we were some loving group of people living in cooperation with each other until, the evil corporations came along. It's just Salk acknowledges humankind for the way it is and says, hey, we need to evolve to something cooperative and along the lines of what Elisabet is talking about if we're going to make the transition to what's required for human beings for the next phase. He thought competition was the paradigm in the past as we were battling with nature to survive. And now we need to partner with nature and co-create with nature, and we need now cooperation. We need a new paradigm. But he doesn't negate all of human history or human existence, or like, progressives now do, pretend like. Hold on one moment.
Or we can end here and
hold on a minute.
And talk again. I love to listen to everybody on this panel. My God, I love Elisabet. I love Michael. I miss Henrietta. Can't wait till she comes back.
Yeah, it'll be great to see Henrietta.
I think maybe we should close.
No, I just need, well, okay. But anyway, I'm back.
Okay. But it's 4 o'clock. We've been on for 2 hours.
Okay.
But I would love to continue this, Michael, because I really really value your perspective, and I whatever. I really value your perspective, and I think you have so much wisdom. And I think that the exercise that I call it an exercise, you called it a practice, of staring into somebody's eyes for, what is it, like 2 minutes or?
Well, it depends how long you can maintain it. You can do it for, for a few minutes, and then you can break, and then again. And it's not staring because it's not like a hard look, but it's a gentle, open looking and kind of being with another person, and just kind of having this sense of another person, letting the sense of their humanity emerge. And as it could be a doorway to different things. I mean, they say the eyes are a doorway to the soul as well. I mean, and again, I would only do this thing with someone who you thought was a positive, basically a positive, good person. I mean, there are people whose energy is constellated in harmful ways, and I wouldn't do this with someone whose energy is constellated in a harmful way, and open yourself in that way with someone like that.
What we could do, Michael? We could do it. We could try to do it on Zoom and see what happens with the two of us. But you could kind of run us through the steps. I'll tell you, I did that exercise once, and I don't know how long we stared at each other, but you can really feel this immense and subtle communication going on. between you, and multi-layered, and the brain doesn't really know what to think. And I still feel bonded to that woman. I liked her before. I didn't really know her before, but I noticed that after that exercise, I was more interested in her. And we had a mutual friend, and I would ask about her and how she was. And, as I said, I felt somewhat bonded. And so that little 5 minutes of connecting with someone, what if we were all doing that and then we all started feeling connected? Well, it's a good thought, isn't it?
Yes, it's a good thought. But I think more practical is to just start with, people who feel some affinity, and then into groups, and then let it spread out. And then, we can be of benefit to ourselves and our partners and those in our group. There was this kind of model too of this man who I think has quite some wisdom, a guy named Charles Eisenstein. Have you heard of him?
Mm-mm.
But he's kind of a leader in like new money kind of circles. It was interesting. I went to some conference too, and he was a speaker and well respected and whatever. I mean, and it was interesting. And I went up to him, and he knew who I was, surprisingly, because he had lived in Taiwan, and some of his friends who led the company that he worked for, had taken, a workshop that I led in Taiwan. It was called the Essence Training. So, but he's a lovely person, and his kind of model is one of creating communities and like little groups inside of the main society where we can practice more loving, supportive, collaborative ways of being with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And, and then looking to create more collaborative economies.
Nadi is joining us. Hi,
Hi,
Nadi.
Nadi.
Hi guys, how's it going? Can you hear me?
Great.
Awesome. Good to see you. Good to be here.
Good to see you too. You look
Yeah.
great.
Oh, good, thanks. I dressed up for it.
Yeah, you do look great. What's the wonderful medallion that you're wearing? What's it a sign of?
That is the seed of life with the star tetrahedron in it, the Merkaba. So it's, it's light body, it's fundamental geometry of the fabric of space-time, all sorts of good stuff. Do I have a lag and a delay on my video?
You do not.
Oh, fabulous. Okay. Yes. Well, I love to have the geometry with me as much as possible. But yeah. Michael, how are you? Marla, how's it going?
Great. Great,
Good.
great, great. Now we started today at 2. So, well,
At 2
That was
California
2
time.
Western time, 2
Western.
Pacific Standard Time. Yes.
Oh, so I'm catching the tail, or where am I?
You're at the perfect time. You to grace us with your lovely presence.
Well, thank you.
Oh,
I was happy to be tracking that it was Wednesday. So what have I done now? Is it over? Because it's 4:00 where I am.
Where are you?
I'm in Oregon. So you started at 2 Pacific time?
just this time.
Oh.
Next time we're going back to 4.
Oh, I missed it clean. So Alan is gone and you both were just chatting?
Yeah, we were
Okay.
having a good chat about how to create more love and connection.
Oh, lovely. Lovely. Yeah, I missed that clean. If you put it in the email, I was on autopilot, so.
No problem.
Okay, well.
I was so
did he
hoping to see you today.
Yeah.
So selfishly, Nadi made me so happy.
Oh, Marla, you're so great. Just beaming such radiance. That's so great. You really look bright and shiny. Do you have fabulous things happening, or was the 2 hours just so enlivening that you are glowing?
Well, I have a dog, as you could see a moment ago, because I'm staying with a friend of mine, and we rescued this German Shepherd, which I've talked about before. That makes me happy. Fills my dog hole in my heart.
Can we see the dog? Is there?
Did you see her before? Come here, because she's so cuddly, even though she, come over here. Oh, pretty.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't she great?
Oh, she's so
I love
pretty.
her. Oh,
Oh my gosh.
cute.
She's
All right,
fabulous.
there she goes. She's young and taking all of our time. It's so much fun.
Hmm. Hmm. So this is the same dog that you talked about, I don't know, 2 times ago. Wow. So is she yours now, or how is it?
No, I'm still at my girlfriend's, and so we're both. We're going to do a little training for her this week, and she's healthy and young and all that. But get her to the vet and see if she needs anything. So we're going to rehome her. So we're just trying to prepare her for the best possible home.
Oh, you're not the home. You're the transition.
Not the home, sadly.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
All right.
we know that my last dog told me that she was bringing this dog to me and that there was a reason for that. You know, I was thinking about this. You should never assume when you get a psychic message that you know the whole story. Just because my dog Pippi Longstocking said, I'm bringing this dog to you, she did not specify, looking back, that this is your dog. I'm just bringing her to you. I should have asked questions.
Right. Right.
This is what I
have
do
our
in
constructs.
psychology. I just ask questions all the time, because I've learned that I function better and get more information if I ask questions.
Well, yeah, and our little constructs put little boxes on what those messages means. Like, oh, the dog is coming. Oh, it's my dog forever. You know, it's just a visitation. Is probably opening your heart up again and activating the dog frequency in you, so you can really attract the perfect fit. We don't get to know.
We don't always get to know until sometimes years later, if we're lucky, right? If
we're lucky, yeah. What was today? What did you talk about? Fascinating subjects as always.
As always, boy, I don't know how to encapsulate that.
Oh, So Henrietta and Elisabet and was there a guest? Oh, I missed some fun. I'm sorry. I'm bummed.
No, there was no guest. And to start with, it was Alan, Elisabet, and me. And I got this message that I wrote some things down that Elisabet said, but when Alan asked me what's one step that we can all take to create hope and create a better situation, the answer I got, and I'm going to think about this, is love of self, love of other, but just as equally loving the connection space between the two. Now that fascinates me. That fascinates
me. Me too. That's fabulous.
I'm going to think about what that means. Well, actually, it means everything, doesn't it, Nadi? But what does that mean? Loving that connection space.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. You know, that strikes me as like just gratitude practice, like loving the potential of it even, right? Like even if it's not there, just the knowing, and then it's got some layers of trust in there. That is beautiful. Love that. Yeah. That's a juicy stuff. I came on for that nugget, Marla, I'm sure. That's awesome.
Oh, I don't know, Nadi, but that's, I had made notes every time, but yeah. And then Michael and I talked about just a couple of practices that we could do to create the same sort of thing, right, Michael?
Yes.
And so go ahead. Do you want to tell us?
We were talking about a process of just being with another person and looking into their eyes, not staring, but just it's like a being with process, and just allowing your heart to open and just allowing yourself to be present with another person, that it can generate love in a field that can intensify and allow the heart to open and then to connect. And, I've done this in workshops where you do it one-on-one with a person and then you switch to another person a few minutes later. And then as I told Marla, another way of doing it is if you're by yourself, that you can look in the mirror and look into your eyes and just connect with yourself and to radiate and allow that love to be present. And then, you know, we talked some about there's different tools if someone's reactivating for you or someone's hostile to you in life, to be able to view them in a way that allow you to feel love towards them. It doesn't mean that you have to act and make yourself vulnerable to a, you know, someone who's acting in a harmful way, but just we were just talking about, you know, there is some truth to the simple messages of Christ, you know, Jesus Christ when he was on the planet, and, you know, songs and other things, you know, love is the only answer, but that love is a doorway to non-duality, and it's a very powerful doorway. And
Nice.
we were talking also about how even the samurai, when they would go into battle, would use love, because love could be a pathway to a luminous presence, a luminous non-dual awareness. And then even in battle, instead of having anger towards their opponent or fear in battle, by being in that loving, luminous place, they would have a more sensitive vision and could be more successful in battle. But if someone was triggering of one, you could view them as in another lifetime. This is a Buddhist practice of having been your mother and helped you in another life, or that think of them as someone else's child, or think of them as suffering in different ways, so that they're then manifesting in what appears to you to be a negative way. So just different tools for transforming situations which are not naturally loving into more loving situations. And then also just the power of finding someone with whom you feel a resonance and then being with each other, so that the love force just magnifies and arises.
Nice. That's beautiful. I jumped in well. I hope sorry to interrupt, but I'm glad I came on for a little hit of the love, and what a great conversation. Juicy. Yeah.
Do you have any gems for us today, Nadi? Don't feel pressured.
No, what's today? Where are we? It's planet Earth. I I don't mean to be so spacey.
Surfing times and places again, Nadi.
You know, it's related to what you're both talking about. I've been so dedicated to my practice of like managing my energetics that I've kind of tuned out. There really is an element to it, you know, and I've created a life where I can, and I'm also in flux between Portland and Sedona, and like selling my house and just all sorts of like, nothing you knew is real isn't here anymore. So like there's this whole, you know, void. And so I'm having a hard time with structure and like the typical units of measurements, like time and day and place. I would resonate with your nugget there. I mean, both of you with the love piece and the building of hope. It's just, okay. My nugget is related directly in that what I've been finding is when I tune out the distortion, you know, when I tune out just that fear and the potential of annihilation, just that whole package, the like miraculous, magical reality that is right next to it is unbelievable. Like it is just as amazing. It's just as mind-blowing as the fear-based one. Like we're all looking around going, how is this happening? And I'm looking over here going like, oh my God, how is this happening? This is so amazing. So, and I really just, it's selfishly motivated, but it's also like, we really need that one boosted. Like the more of us that are seeing the other side and amplifying it and carrying it. I think that's been my full-time job. And it's really interesting to come in and feel a little bit disoriented, because just in large measure, it takes that single-minded focus you know, there is a warrior aspect to this transition, you know, where it's almost like, can't let anything distract me. This is my job. I am dedicated. I am of service. And I falter, I waver, and yet I've been holding strong for the last week or two, and it's really good. It's really good to remember that this can be happening too. So that's the nugget I'm riding on. It's the new
Love
dimensional
that.
reality.
I love that. So
Yeah.
change and disorganization can be fruitful and lead to wonderful new realities.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, collectively, you know, my little microcosm of the macrocosmic process, you know, of just like everything being pulled up. And there really is, there's that void of potentiality, right? Where like, it's so much more than we could have possibly tried to have constructed with our little linear, you know, tiny little 3-dimensional perspective on this vast universe of infinite wisdom. Like, I want to tap that. Yeah.
Yes, I'm with you.
Yeah. There's a lot of us doing this. Go team.
Go team. I love that.
Yeah. You know, we can do this. Now's the time. So.
Love it, Nadi.
Yeah. Well, and then look at that. We just create it. Like, it builds on itself, right? Like, I hopped on this call and all of a sudden here are these two wonderful people talking about love and the permeable nature of how it transcends. So it works out. It builds on itself. You know, it's fabulous. So
it does.
Yeah.
And we get to be with everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody else who's here, we get to be with them too.
That nugget of the in between is rich. That is potent. I'm gonna hang out on that for a while. Yeah. How's Alan doing? How's Alan? How's he doing?
He was doing great. And the last we saw him, he changed into a suit. It was like magic, wasn't it, Michael?
Yes.
1 minute he was there in a white shirt, and the next minute he was in a handsome suit and trotting off someplace to give a talk or something.
Fabulous. I'm sorry I missed it. I've never seen him in a suit. Yeah, that's great. I'll have to go back and watch for the clip. That's great.
Yeah, and Elisabet had some really wonderful things to say.
As always.
So
she's so great.
As always. Yeah. Oh my God, we're such an awesome team. Pardon my enthusiasm.
It's fun. Yeah. Next, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I find it so enriching.
Yeah, me too. Calls and getting together and panels, and it just feels vital, right? There's this huge emanation of inspiration when we're coming together. I agree. Yeah. Michael, how did you know? I know you probably go so far back with Alan. How long have you known him? Like decades?
No, I came in through Henrietta.
Oh, okay. So brand new. Yeah.
And then, you know, Tony and I came in through Henrietta, and you know, I've been getting to know Alan then offline as well. And there's a company that I'm involved with that has some very cool new futuristic technology that Alan's starting to help me with. So
fun. Yeah, it's fun to get caught up in the Alan whirlwind. You know,
isn't it wonderful?
I had that in Sedona, and it was like, we met. I don't know if have I told the story about how we met at the barbecue? Because it was just.
No, I'd love to hear it.
It was so funny because it was just not. I think it was the most unusual meeting I've ever had. There was a Memorial Day vegan barbecue, right? And in Sedona, and we were there. And then he showed up with JJ and Desiree Hurtak and like this whole entourage that came in. And I know who he was, obviously, right? But then I don't know. I stood up. I think I introduced myself to him, and we started talking a little bit. And Michael, it was amazing because the little New York contingency there, right? He knew my meditation teacher, who he lives on the Upper West Side. He's probably had like a handful of students his whole life. I mean, it was amazing. And so we kind of had this moment, and then he like very randomly, I didn't even know what was happening. He like leans in, he goes, okay, well, I can't remember what he said. He said something about, let's see what the vibration is, or let's see how this is. And he leans in, and we just did like third eye to third eye, just this like galactic, like remembering of how we've known each other over the, right? And he pulled back and he's like, oh, good, high vibes. Let's go hang out.
Love him.
It was like a quintessential Sedona meeting, you know. It was really fabulous. And then it was like we were just instant partners. He was just taking me everywhere, and it was just in that Allen flow. It's just so great. I'm glad to have been caught up in that.
Are you moving to Sedona? Is that?
Yeah, I'm gonna go be down there for a little while. It's
But
really.
Are you planning on? Are you leaving Portland and relocating there, or what's your plan?
Well, yeah. Have I frozen? Can you hear me? Okay.
Now we hear you.
Am I frozen?
No.
You were for a second.
I'm selling my home, so yeah, I'm selling my home, so it's a fairly significant relocation. At the same time, my family is up here, my community is up here, so I kind of have a both feeling, but I don't know what it's gonna look like. It's kind of Marla, where we started with the dog. It's like, okay, I am on a need to know basis. Flexibility seems to be the name of the game. So that's my best answer, is like, oh, I'll find out. Yeah.
I feel the same way.
I spent
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, I was
No, go ahead.
moving, and I had a 2-week gap in between where I was moving from and where I was going to. And then when I got here to stay 2 weeks with my dear friend, and then we found the dog. Now it's like 3 weeks because of the dog. I'm still here. I moved everything I have over to the other location, whatever. I found it really freeing, Nadi. I mean, it was hard to disrupt my routines. I work at home, so that I found that difficult. I felt really challenged by it. But there was also this moment like, oh, I'm going on another adventure. That's fun. I mean, I'm not leaving Southern California like you are leaving your home, but yeah, and the dog has been a whole adventure. And so, yeah, I just got to the same point. I was like, oh, just stay loose and whatever. What does it matter? As long as I can do my work anywhere, it's okay. It's a good place to be, I think, actually. Mm-hmm. But it is a little disruptive and challenging. I don't know how pilots and flight attendants do it. How do they do it? I don't know how.
I don't think I could. Yeah.
Well, I think people have different natures, different body types, different emotional bodies, and some people are vibrationally able to do those kinds of things. I mean,
yeah.
Okay.
Well, you both must have been winding it up. I don't mean to sort of carry it on if you've been on for 2 hours and are tapped with your insights and conversation.
Well,
I'm a little tired, but Nadi, I'm so happy to see you. I was like, where is she? Okay.
Oh, you're so great.
Without her?
Oh, that's so great. I thought we were on for regular time. So
next week.
Must have been. So, but he got a text from me about a couple minutes ago. He must have let me in because he must have seen my text because he let me in because and so he knows that I was not tuned into the start time. But next week I'll definitely, it's back to 4 next week, right? Okay.
Yep. Pacific Standard Time, 4:00.
Yes.
Standard
We're
Time.
We're gonna have a fun time. My friends are coming on for a solar flash conversation.
Oh, great.
Oh yeah. This is good stuff. Good stuff.
Good.
I did an interview with a friend of mine. It's a whole long story. I won't go into it, but it's about the nature of perhaps like a single cataclysmic event of a solar flash that like activates our, you know, DNA and simultaneously like sets off those of us that are tuned into our multidimensionality, and then also lets everybody be free who doesn't want to be here, you know, and just the exploration of consciousness, of being ready for a mass shift, whether it's a solar flash or who knows. But you know, my friend she's a teacher of Drinvalo Melchizedek's work, and he's been talking about an event and what's the process of 3 days of darkness, you know, this whole well-known prophecy of mass change in consciousness. And I think I'm a little bit desperate for something like that. I'm just looking around going like, God, how are we going to get out of this? So I really get excited. I feel like there's a lot of potential. So I've rounded up my friends and all of us just keep talking about it. And then I think Alan saw it and he said, let's do that again. And so we're going to, you know, and he had a friend, Hope, who was on one of the calls. She apparently channels an entity who was also talking about the event. It is fascinating stuff because there's a ton of people in regressions that talk about it. So preview of next week. And then I really don't want to keep you. It's 2.5 hours online. I can't imagine. You must be fried.
Probably a little bit tired, but that'll be great. That'll be great. I don't know. You know me. I don't know a thing about any of this stuff. Isn't it great to have a neophyte with you in some ways? I mean, you know,
it really is.
Just soaking it up.
Yeah, no, beginner's mind is so valuable. Like we all get so entrenched in our perspectives. Everybody who comes on here is invaluable and brings this unique, awesome, you know, skill set to this conversation. It's great.
Isn't it great? And I can feel everybody out there who's listening or watching. I just feel a presence, which I'm really grateful for.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, it's good to come together.
Mm-hmm. Okay, everyone. See you next week at 4. Michael, you're going to be there too?
I don't know. Depends on, I'd like to, but we will see.
Okay.
Sometimes pressing business.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Okay, blessings to all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Michael.